All right, we're going to finish off here with a look at Herodotus. Sort of at a run of it in today. It's a good job, being a history professor, a history teacher. You get to read all these sources and think about them and work through them, and I am hoping that you guys out there in our class are getting a sense of this fun of being in history, and also the sense of connection that we are ancient people, and our ideas and our thoughts come out of this ancient traditions, and we have books that really give us the formation of our understanding of ourselves as humans, and our understanding of politics. But let's talk about women. Let's talk about a lot of ancient texts talk a lot about women. I mean, that's Tacitus. I mean, we're going to talk about Livia is a big deal, and Nero's mom and all this sort of stuff. A lot of talk about very powerful women. We're going to talk about Atossa today and Amazons, and these come out of Herodotus. They come out of other stories too. Plutarch tells, the Amazon stories come from a number of places. I think Amazon, the full story or a full story is first told in Herodotus. I think there's earlier mentions of Amazons, but what what we're getting into is really some interesting things. Now, this is the modern movie of Artemisia, and they make her sexualize her and then brutalize her as a violent woman. That's not the way Herodotus presents her as a wise woman. And but this is what we want. This is what we do to Herodotus. This was the 1960s, early 1960s move. That would be Xerxes, and that's Artemisia. And there she's more of a flirt. And it's like, go to the source, man. The source she's a much more powerful, fascinating woman in the sources than in the modern thinking about her. Okay? So let's jump into the book. We've run across a lot of interesting women, and like I said, going back to even the woman who takes care of Cyrus as a baby. Somehow all history hangs on this woman's actions, and we get it's a fascinating sort of thing to think of how small things matter in the course of human history, and Herodotus is very attuned to that. The small things matter, and so he has the story of Phaedymia. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's spelled differently in different translations and such, but Phaedymia is the daughter of Otanes, the guy who argues for democracy, and in that transition where there's this deception by the Magi. The Magi have taken over. Cambyses has been killed, but the people don't know that Cambyses has been killed, and so Otanes has an inkling that if you go in there and find this out, if the real Cambyses exists or whether it's this fake Cambyses, a deception, and the wife, one of the wives of Cambyses, is this daughter of Otanes, and so he sends her in. And the story is that the fake guy has the ears that don't work, that are cut off, and she's got to feel for his ears and figure out whether he's the real. And she's not dumb. She sits here and goes, ask Atossa. We're talking about Atossa here, and she says, that he can't get to Atossa. She can hardly, Atossa will know, and then she's, you can't get to Atossa. So Phaedymia then says, you have a noble, she says, this is going to be dangerous for me to do this. And Phaedymia, Otanes says, you have noble blood in your veins, and you must not shrink from any danger your father orders you to face. And then Phaedymia responds, this is going to be extremely risky thing for me to do. For if the husband proves to have no ears and she were caught feeling for him, he would certainly kill her. All right. this is somewhat like the Esther story, in the sense that these emperors have harems and they rotate women, and women can rise and fall on the rotation, and so Esther has to break the rotation. That's the thing to get in and save the Jews, and then Phaedymia has to actually risk her life by going in and if she's feeling for his ears and he figures that out, he's going to know she's trying to figure out whether he's the real emperor or not. And she goes in, feels for his ears, finds out that he's not the real emperor, tells Otnes gets that Magnificent Seven together, and then they overthrow the Magi. So she's crucial. She is absolutely crucial for the future of the what is the Persian Empire, the Persian system, and we have her name, we have her story, we have words put into her mouth as part of the hearsay that Herodotus heard this story of this heroic young woman, and wants to repeat it, wants to tell us it. Interestingly enough, the Persians came into Egypt also because of a young woman who's the daughter of a pharaoh. See, when you're a woman in the royal house, there's all sorts of various types of powers that come to you. And the daughter of Amasis, it's actually Cambyses wants the daughter of Amasis. Amasis sends the daughter of the previous pharaoh, and the daughter of the previous pharaoh, I forget her name, but she has information. She has information that if Cambyses learns it, it's going to be the downfall of the Egyptian regime, and the armies are going to come. And so this young woman carries information that can change the course of history. And so this idea of women as emissaries, women and information, women in power, there's many different roles that the Herodotus sort of explores and deals with. There's at one point he says that Atossa is the most powerful. This is at the beginning of the, when Xerxes is going to be named Darius's successor. Atossa is Xerxes' mother. And there are other older sons and that sort of stuff. But Atossa is the daughter of Cyrus. And so Atossa carries the Achaemenid line. And so she's very powerful. And so she's the daughter of Cyrus, the wife of Darius, and the mother of Xerxes. Very powerful position. And she argues in the beginning of, I think it's book 7 or something, for her son to become the emperor. And he does. That's how Xerxes comes to power. And Herodotus then, and depending on how you translate it, says that although, this was happened because of, apparently a council meeting and such, Herodotus believes that it happened because Atossa is the most powerful, or she somehow is the person who pulls the strings in the Persian Empire, is Atossa, the daughter of Cyrus, wife of Darius, mother of Xerxes. This incredible power there. Now, it's an informal source of power. If you think of structures, this is coming from an informal source rather than a formal source. But this is so. But Herodotus and other authors, Tacitus, other authors explore this sort of informal power that a lot of women have, and this women would have them largely within households, depending on the level of the household. But then we often get these stories of these queenly women and stuff like that. But one of the fun stories of Atossa, let's get this is what you see in textbooks a lot, and it just, it's okay. I do it here just because you want to give a face. I want a picture, but we don't know that that's Atossa. But hey, it's a Persian woman, probably royal. She's got a good looking hat, so therefore, we put it there. But there's a fun scene in book 3, which you read, in which Darius is in bed with his wife, Atossa. Now, how anybody knows this information. This is Tacitus is going to talk about this. Tacitus says, I was in the household, so I knew these rumors of the household. The royal households carry lots of rumors, especially because there's lots of servants and people coming out, and there's not the privacy level that we sometimes expect. And so therefore, there's these rumors that come out of, like pillow talk of like what the Darius and his wife are talking about. And so Herodotus would be getting a hearsay later on of what actually happened. But this is actually, if the whole book of Herodotus is about like why the Persians why they attacked Greece. And there's reasons, various reasons. But when it comes down to the actual why Darius ordered for the attack on Athens, it's Atossa. And it says they're lying in bed, and she began a conversation with him because she actually wants to manipulate him so that there's a boat that'll take a doctor back to Greece. And she goes, "Why aren't you conquering more places? Why aren't you? You're getting a little fat." And then she says, "The Persians want their leader to be a man, but you're just sitting around. There's a time for action, And it's this idea of this pillow talk, which is going to change the course of history. This so-called battle that saves the West, and all this sort of stuff is going to come out of, Atossa and a little, informal power to encourage Darius to attack into Greece. It's interesting. It's just fun. This is what makes reading Herodotus so much more interesting than Thucydides, for example. And most history historians, for example, is because you watch documentaries. I've watched these documentaries about the Persian Empire by these big scholars, and they don't even mention Atossa. Darius chose to attack Greece. Well, that's not exactly what Herodotus says. Herodotus doesn't say that Darius just up and chose to attack Greece. He was needled into it. Little pillow talk. Yeah. That's the sources. Get to the sources. Sources are way more interesting than later interpreters in many cases. So Atossa, powerful figure within the empire, and she holds the role of like this. In monarchies, in situations of dynastic power structures, when the one guy gets old, the king gets old, the emperor gets old, the next one needs to be chosen ahead of time. You don't want to just wait for the guy to die. That often leads to civil war. So who is the person who becomes the real key to this would be the wife. The wife of the mother of the child that's, the mother of the person who wants to be king. This is David. And Bathsheba. And in the David Bathsheba story, it's Bathsheba who goes in when David is very old and says, "You promised me that my son Solomon would become king." And David says, "Okay." Women often, this is another major role for women, an informal role, is to control the dynastic transition. Now, Tacitus goes into the story of Livia. Livia is the mother of Tiberius, but Caesar Augustus is not the father of Tiberius. Caesar Augustus is getting old. There's a chance that the whole imperial system that Caesar Augustus had created would fizzle out, and we'd go back to having the Republican government that Cicero wanted. But it's Livia, especially according to Tacitus, it's Livia who just, no, I want my son Tiberius to have, to carry on this imperial power. And so Tiberius does get chosen. He gets adopted. There's an adoption system. And this again is when you're controlling a dynasty, and this happens all around the world, all sorts. It's very natural, it's very understandable, very commonsensical. So we see this, that the ancient writers wrote about it and they thought about it, and they gave us examples of various versions of it. Tacitus really does not like Livia at all. But Herodotus, we get, I think, a bit of a sense of admiration of Atossa, and certainly admiration of Artemisia. Artemisia is the story of the Battle of Salamis, and Artemisia is presented as a queen who is in full control of Caria, which is where Halicarnassus is, and so she would be well known. The stories of Artemisia would be very well known to Herodotus, and good chance Herodotus's father, grandfather, and that sort of people were soldiers or something for Artemisia. But Artemisia is, as a client queen, she is Greek in ethnos, but she's part of the Persian imperial system, and so as a client queen, she has to supply soldiers. She decides to give ships and go herself as a type of commodore, and at the same time, then she is going to offer advice to Xerxes. When Xerxes gets to Athens, her advice is to not. You're here. You've got it. It's all done. Just sit tight, and you've won. And but of course, Xerxes can't be content and stuff, and he goes on. But Artemisia is presented as this very powerful voice, of which Xerxes sort of realizes she was right. And then there's that fun. They know that they're talking about gender because they do this fun little thing where Xerxes gets confused. Xerxes always gets confused. Even in the Bible with Esther, Xerxes is a bit of a he's the cucumber in VeggieTales, and Xerxes sees what Artemisia crash into another ship in order to escape and protect her own sailors. But he then he thinks she is actually hit and attacked someone who's the enemy, the Greeks. And so she said, my men have become women and my women have become men. And there's lots of gender play. And you got to look for it. When you're reading the book, look for the gender play and stuff. It's very interesting. And so don't think that the ancient world was simply some sort of like manhandled thing. It was there was a lot of consciousness, a lot of discussion, a lot of interest in how this all works. We'll see that in Aristotle when we get there. Artemisia is a great story. She's my favorite of all the stories in the book. But then there's the Amazons. All right, Herodotus gives us our best and most fun, most actually believable story, I think, about the Amazons. Amazon is not an ethnos. It's not an ethnic group. Scythians, they come from Scythia. They're an ethnic group. No. Jews come from Jews. This is a group. This is a gendered oriented designation in which women who want to actually break gender barriers. Okay, and that makes them an Amazon. And we don't know what the Amazon sort of means, but it usually has something to do with one breast and a type of like non-nurturing woman, something that's more interested in fighting, like this woman here on the cover there, shooting arrows and stuff rather than nurturing babies and stuff like that. So we have this great story in Herodotus. You read it, where women are enslaved. They then want to have sex with the men, but the men want them to become their wives. And no, we're not becoming your wives, and because you will then want us to become like your mothers. We don't want to be like our mothers-in-law within the sewing and the domestic lifestyle. We want to ride, shoot, and do all that stuff. And so the men then are willing to leave. This happens up here. This is the Black Sea. And the men are willing to leave, and they head up this river here and then shoot north. And this becomes the sort of tradition of the Amazons, all right? And then, of course, we have Amazon River. We have Amazon stuff all over the world in different stories. But they're stories about women who exert themselves to change gender roles, to not be confined by the gender roles. This is Calafia. This is in the Mark Hopkins Hotel on Nob Hill in San Francisco. And you have Queen Calafia. Calafia here was an Amazon. It was a novel written in Spain, the Amadis of Gaul, but the Calafia was the leader of an island of women who ran the show, and then she falls in love with this guy and goes off to fight Muslims. But this is Amazons, all right? And so we have this great tradition of Amazons, and especially then also to be free is you have to head to the frontier. You have to go away. This is the way of civilization. And for Herodotus to head out the Tanai and then up into what is now Russia or something is to head off into the frontier. And so the frontier has freedom. And especially if you want to mess with gender roles and not be caught in the traps of social expectation of your parents-in-law, then you head to the wilds, okay? And, you know, these are all very interesting things, but like, read this with open eyes, alert to the interesting things going on. These are great stories. This is not simply some sort of chess pieces or some sort of cookie cutter or some sort of, boring history. This is really exciting. And Herodotus, the father of my discipline, this is our aspiration, is to be like Herodotus, to work with testimony, to work with our ears. We're not doing laboratory experiments. We're not doing mathematical experiments. We're not surmising what must be a rational choice by some political figure in the ancient past. No, we are actually listening to stories, and then we're cultivating, a system of judging what stories are true, less true, might be true, that kind of thing. And Herodotus is the great master of that, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's really interested in human life. What makes humans flourish? Peace is the ultimate goal. This is not a book about war. This is a book about how wars come about because peace and contentment are subverted by all sorts of people and decisions. Okay.